have Dr. Dennis Davis here with us today. He travels not just nationwide, actually around the world giving these presentations. And I'm glad to see so many people here today. Hopefully word spread from last week's training. And I think that we are in for an enlightening and entertaining next hour. So, thank you.
Afternoon, folks.
Afternoon.
Oh, come on. Afternoon, folks. Afternoon. You're like, man, I'd rather be any place other than this on my lunch hour. I get it. But we're going to see if we can make this fun anyway. My name is Dennis Davis. I'm going to be the tour guide for the next 50 minutes. And I guess the most appropriate place for me to start is to tell you a little bit about my background, how I got to be in front of you. So really briefly, I work for a labor and employment law firm, Ogletree Deacons. However, I am not a lawyer by training. I am a shrink by training. Anybody here ever been in therapy? No, I'm just kidding. I didn't really want to know that. I was joking. That would be a HIPAA violation. One of the things that people ask me all the time is, what is it that a shrink does for a law firm? Well, I take what can be relatively complex legal concepts and I translate them into language that we regular folk use. You know how lawyers talk sometimes. They use legalese. They use language that the rest of us don't speak. And what happens then is some of us can't internalize the information, so I translate it. Now, I started my career as a police psychologist, and in that role, what me and my then colleagues did was pre-employment psychological testing for law enforcement agencies. We worked with local, state, and federal agencies like the Secret Service and CIA and the FBI. We would test their applicants. In addition to that, we did training in their academies. More relevant to what we're going to talk about this afternoon, I developed a specialty niche. I started training SWAT teams and hostage negotiators. Now, my expertise was not in taking a person down with force, but rather you have this person, usually it was a man, holed up inside of an apartment building with hostages. The SWAT team shows up and establishes a perimeter. Across the street on top of a building, there's a sniper. And if all else fails, the sniper's got to take this guy out. But you don't want to take out a guy if you don't have to, so someone's got to talk to this man and see if they can get him to come out without hurting himself, hurting any hostages, or hurting any officers. And that's what I did, and I trained other people to do. Now you're thinking, what does that have to do with our work here? Well, along the way I got interested in some research. I wanted to find out if the hostage taker was, say, a white male, could a woman negotiate with him? Or if the hostage taker was a Latino male or an Islamic male, could a black woman negotiate with him? And that took me down this path where I was looking into race and culture and gender and religion, and how various people who have seemingly very little in common, at least on the surface, how they communicate with each other. I started writing papers on that, and I started writing books, and then I started getting asked by non-law enforcement agencies to come in and talk about professional interaction, professional communications. How is it that two people come together and they interact for 2 minutes, say a man and a woman, and they walk away from each other, and the man has one perspective on how that interaction went, and the woman has a completely different perspective on how that interaction went. So what we're going to talk about here today is sexual harassment after Weinstein. There is a whole new landscape, and we're going to talk about how to manage that landscape. So here's what we're going to focus on. We're going to talk about harassment and hostile work environment, what it is and what it isn't. I will tell you that people throw terms around a lot. And I've become convinced that people don't know sometimes what those terms mean. Now, I know that this is a sophisticated audience, but not all audiences are. And I'll give you an example. I was doing a training in Duarte, California, the day after the Super Bowl. We started at 7 a.m. I got there at 6:15. I'm getting all set up. This guy comes in. He says, "Hey, Duck, guess what?" I said, "What?" He said, "Yesterday my boss had a Super Bowl party." I said, "All right." He said he invited him, her, everybody on the team but me. I said, all right. He said, well, isn't that discrimination? I said, no. He said, well, is it harassment? I said, no. He said, there's got to be something. What is it? I said, I'm afraid he don't like you. His mouth fell open. He was certain that he had been subjected to some type of unlawful behavior. He hadn't been. So people kind of throw these terms around. We're going to talk about what those things mean, what they are not. We're going to talk about protecting yourself. We're going to talk about protecting your organization. There are 3 disclaimers that I like to give before every class I do. Disclaimer number 1 is about language. I don't anticipate it happening during our brief stay together this afternoon, but it's possible that at some point during our stay together, I might use a word or a phrase or an example that some of you might find mildly offensive. I don't think that'll happen, but it could happen. Why? Well, because you can't talk about harassment and discrimination without some examples. So I'm going to share some examples I've come across in my travels. I've done my best to clean them up, but if you clean them up too much, they lose their meaning. So I'm going to share some things with you precisely as I heard them. I don't think you'll be offended, but if I happen to step on your toes, I ask that you excuse me. That's not my intent. Disclaimer number 2 is about humor. I do try to have a good time in my class, but please don't make the mistake of thinking that I'm kidding. All you have to do is turn on the news on any given evening, and you'll see people's careers being forfeited because they're failing to take this stuff seriously. And then the final disclaimer is about questions and comments. Listen, we have a very short amount of time, and that's okay. I'd rather answer your question than go through every slide in this deck. So jump in, ask questions, mix it up with me. We together so far? Yes. We together so far? Yes. All right then. Now, I don't talk that fast all the time, but I wanted to kind of get us started. Now let me slow down. Let me tell you how we're going to cover maybe 85% of the information we're going to talk about here today. I'm going to show you some stuff, and then we're going to do a pretest. But let me start by showing you some pictures. Anybody know who these people are? Yeah. Who are they? Harassers. Somebody said harassers, but I work for a law firm, so I'm obligated to tell you they are alleged harassers. Now, some of them have copped to harassment and other things. Some of them have copped to much, much more serious things. Some of the people up there have been accused of all kinds of sexual impropriety, including rape. All right? I need you to understand that we're not going to talk politics today. There are examples of people on the right side of the aisle and the left side of the aisle, in blue states and red states, who have fallen because they haven't paid attention to these concepts we're going to talk about here today. We're not going to talk politics. Anybody familiar with the Me Too movement? Yes. All right, well, what do you know about it? What do you think about it? What are your thoughts about it? Your name, sir?
Chris.
Chris, what do you think about the Me Too movement?
I think it's a great movement.
You think it's a great movement? Why?
Women are able to speak up and talk about their stories pertaining to sexual harassment, and maybe they didn't feel comfortable previously doing so.
He said women are able to speak up and talk about their experiences, and maybe previously they didn't feel so. Anybody willing to acknowledge in a class full of people, you know what, Dennis, I'm not quite so sure. I think maybe some of these people are opportunists. Anybody willing to acknowledge this? I will tell you, I appreciate it. What's your name, man?
Marcellus?
He said, Dennis, I'll raise my hand, but I ain't going to give you my name. And Marcellus, tell me, what do you think about this Me Too movement, man?
No, I appreciate it. I think it's important. But at the same time, I do think there are some women that are opportunities.
Okay. And I appreciate you willing to jump in and mix it up with me. I will tell you that I know for a fact you're not the only person who feels that way. But let me say something to you. I'm not here as an apologist for the Me Too movement. Here's what I'm going to tell you, though, what most of the research tells us. Most of the research tells us, Marcellus, not only do most people who come forward and complain about harassment, not only do they not make it up. Now, it might not rise to the definition of harassment, it might not rise or lower itself to unlawful behavior, but when they come forward and say that something happened, the research says more often than not, something really did happen. Whether it was harassment or not, we don't know, but something did happen. But here's what the research also tells us, that more people stay silent than come forward. I just want to share that with you. I'm not trying to change your minds about the Me Too movement. Here's what I do want you to understand. You can't put the worm back in the bottle. You can't put the genie back in the bottle. The fact of the matter is, I believe, and there are many people who agree with me, that we're at a tipping point and we're never going to be where we were yesterday or last year with respect to harassment. What that means for all of us is those things, those ways where we kind of backslid a little bit maybe last year, they're probably not going to pass this year. Okay? I'll tell you that on average, the average Fortune 500 company spends in excess of $6.7 million a year in the aftermath of sexual harassment allegations. That's a lot of green. So in addition to the Me Too movement, lots of organizations are saying, no, we've got to stop this. All right? So here's how we're going to cover the bulk of our information today. We're going to start with a series of true-false questions. It's a pretest. Here's what's going to happen. I'm going to put a series of statements on the screen, and your job is to read the statement, or if you're in the cheap seats, hear it when I read it out loud, and then determine if you think the statement is true or false. but there's more. Some of these will be very readily apparent to you. You will know right off the bat what the answer is. So I don't want you to just tell me true or false. I want you to tell me the rationale behind the answer. Here we go. Here's the first one. It goes like this. Harassment can be partially defined as being rude, crude, and or lewd. Harassment can be partially defined as being rude, crude, and or lewd. True or false? True. Up here sounds like this. Somebody take a stand. True or false?
True.
All right, then. I heard a woman's voice someplace. Did you say true to that, ma'am?
Yeah.
Your name is?
Angelina.
She's looking at me like, why do you need to know my name, man? Let me tell you why I always ask people their names in classes like this. My job is not just to show you some things in my deck or to lecture you. My job is also to model some things for you. And here's what I know. I know that if this woman's name is Angelina and I call her Angelina, right? I'm paying into an account. And that account's going to pay me dividends when? Anybody know? When will that account pay me off? Well, it'll pay me off when I step in it. When I say something or do something that I didn't know was sexually loaded, I didn't know was ethnically or racially or culturally loaded. Here's what she's going to do. She's going to say, you know what? I've worked with Dennis for the last 18 months, and he's never made me the butt end of the joke. He's never been inappropriate sexually with me. I've never heard him make anybody the butt end of the joke. I don't know if he knows what that term means. I'm either going to give him a pass or I'm going to pull him aside and tell him what it means. And I will tell you, that has happened for me more times than I can even count in my own career. And so it's a really good thing you people say. So Angelina, why did you say true to this?
Because when someone's rude, it bothers you and it creates a really hostile environment.
Okay, so Angelina says that when someone's rude, it bothers you. So whenever I'm being rude, it's harassment?
When it creates a hostile environment.
So, but see, that's a legal term. What does that mean? What do I have to do to create a hostile work environment? What do I have to do? She's like, why are you picking on me, man? Yes, ma'am, your name is?
My name's Dee.
Dee, help her out.
So it would have to be ongoing and pervasive.
Okay, so in order for it to be harassment or hostile work environment, it's got to be repeated, ongoing, and or pervasive. What Dee is suggesting is that once is not enough. We're going to come back and talk about that, and I'm going to push back on that a little bit to find out if, in fact, once can ever be enough. But I want to stay with this first. Rude, crude, and lewd behavior. Is that always harassment?
No.
No, it is not. So then, where's the demarcation? Anybody? How do we determine? Let me tell you why I'm asking this. Parents in the room. 12-year-old boys like to tell what type of jokes?
Dirty joke.
You said dirty. Give me something specific. Fart jokes. Thank you very much. And 12-year-old boys like to tell fart jokes. Now, if I, as a grown man, I come to work and I tell a fart joke, well, of course that's rude, it's crude, it's lewd, it's unprofessional, it's inappropriate, but that wouldn't be harassment. So the question is, when does my rude, crude, and or lewd behavior become harassment?
If you start touching me.
I beg your pardon?
If you start touching me, then actually, if you put your hands on me, especially in private parts.
And so your name, ma'am, is?
I don't have a name.
No. You got a name. What's your name?
I got a name, Donna.
Donna? So Donna has gone from 0 to 60 and nothing flat. Donna has gone from fart jokes to groping. Hold on for a second, Donna. Because you gotta admit, there's gotta be a way for me to create an inappropriate environment for me to harass without putting my hands on you. We will get to that. That certainly is inclusive.
But there's no question if they start putting their hands on you.
Yes, but when does my conversation become sexual in nature? When does my conversation become harassment?
If you start saying a lot of inappropriate, let's say, off-color jokes, dirty jokes about sexual things or things that.
So the answer is, determination is made based
I mean,
upon.
classes a lot. You can tell when a woman's getting a little
See,
bit.
Donna needs to get her own class, don't she? So you answered it. I want to make sure that everyone heard. What's that?
If it makes Donna uncomfortable.
Well, yeah, but not everything. The fart joke might make you uncomfortable. So, but she gave us the answer. That's why I wanted to stop her so we can make sure we didn't go past it too fast. It's based upon content. You will know that you've gone from rude, crude, and or lewd into what Angelina says a hostile work environment based upon the content. It becomes sexual, for example. Well, you know what? That topic has been removed from the workplace. I don't get to come to work and talk about my sex life, inquire about your sex life, tell sex jokes, use sexual innuendo, double entendre. So it's determined based upon the content. We together so far? We together so far?
Yes.
All right, man. See, I'm kind of like a Baptist preacher. In that, as I'm bringing forth the word, if all I, you don't have to speak in tongues. If all I get is this, I think you're all not hearing me, so I keep
So,
preaching.
wait a second, if you say
But-
one dirty joke,
Wait, you gotta wait for a second. Let me finish my story. In order for me to know that you're with me, you all gotta give me an amen down there. We together? Amen. Now, Donna, go ahead.
so the question is, you're in a surrounding and somebody comes in and says sort of an off, or my type of off color, or sort of a dirty jokes, and you're all laughing, but you really don't like it, and then the same group, or the guy or the woman, usually it's a guy, but the woman they do it too, because everything is equal opportunity. You come in and then you say something to them. You say, I really think it's inappropriate. If you're going to do it, maybe take the people that really enjoy it, go in some other room.
Well, now, see, now, hold on, listen, you're your career now. Hold on, now, time out.
I think you can give one
But
free
Donna, time
dirty
out.
joke,
No,
but
you
not
don't.
one free touch.
Time out. Here's the problem. Okay, Donna, after I dismiss everybody else, you stay around. I'm gonna save your career for you. Goodness gracious. No, here's one of the problems you made. One of the mistakes you made is suggesting that if the four of us are okay with the inappropriate humor, then it's okay. When we get to the definition of harassment, we're going to see that that's not true, but we're going to move on first. The next question is this. An example of harassment might be commenting on or complimenting someone because of their looks. True or false?
Yes.
Yes. Let's talk about this, because I will tell you, your name, ma'am? Right here? Right here?
Brianna.
Brianna, you had that, I don't know, look in your face.
Oh, I was just trying to read.
Oh, okay. That was a serious squint you got there. You think this is true or false, though?
True.
Okay, this is true. Here's what I'm going to tell you. When we give the full definition of harassment, one of the things we're going to see is that sometimes it includes unwanted attention. Fellas, hear this. And the reason I need the fellas to hear this, I need everyone to hear this, but especially the men, is that because somewhere between 90 and 95% of all allegations of harassment are against us, fellas. I can't tell you how many times I've done an investigation, I've gone to some guy, I said, hey, did you say this or do this? And he'll go, yeah. And I said, well, what made you think that was okay? And typically the first thing they'll say is, I didn't mean any harm. I meant it as a compliment, right? And you want to be very, very careful with complimenting people on their looks. Their work product, no problem. What they contribute to the workplace, no problem. But their looks, you want to be very careful about that, because there are people amongst us who don't like to have any attention drawn on them. Anybody ever met anyone who doesn't like to have any attention thrown their way at all? Anybody? You one of those people? It's too late now, Angelina. I'm serious. Anybody? I know I have. I was in graduate school before I first recognized that type of person existed. There was this woman. We were going out, and she was really, really smart, and she was really, really good looking. And I know what you're thinking. Why was she going out with me? She had low self-esteem. And one day we showed up on campus together, right? And she had a new haircut style, right? And based upon the shape of her face, it was very becoming for her. And so I said, hey, that's nice, right? She was cool with that. But as we walked across campus, 2, 3 people, one at a time, came up and said, hey, oh, that looks nice. And they made a big old deal about her hairstyle, right? And I was watching her as they were talking to her, and you would have thought that someone had punched her in the face. She was very, very uncomfortable with the compliments, right? Now, I just want the women to answer this next question. Ladies, what do you think she did when she went home that night? She changed her hair back. I asked that question to the ladies, guys, because I had never done this class where there weren't 5 or 6 or 10 or 15 women in the class who knew the answer. She changed her hair back. She was so uncomfortable with the attention that she decided, I don't want it, right? And so you've got to be very, very careful. The other reason we have to be careful with compliments is because we have to acknowledge that there are differences in how males and females in our society are socialized. Maybe someday that'll change, but as of yet, it hasn't. Say what I'm talking about. Little girls are socialized from the time they are this high to talk around things and to be indirect, right? They learn from the time they're this high that you speak with every being of your body, not just your words, but your eyes and your facial contact and your body language. Parents, what numbers do little girls play best? Parents? 2s. Girls play in 2s. It doesn't have to just be 2 of them. It could be 8 of us, but we're playing in 2s. So, your name, ma'am? Me and Claire are two 8-year-old little girls. She's my best friend, right? And we're playing up close and personal. And when she does something that I disapprove of, I kind of go, and if she moves the wrong piece on the board, I kind of move her hand. We're very touchy-feely, right? We go up into women, and what we have learned is you don't have to say everything with your mouth. Sometimes you say it with your eyes and your body language. So what happens, very often, a woman will be looking at a man, and she'll be thinking to herself, great balls of fire. He's got broad shoulders. I wonder what he looks like with his shirt off. Well, she'll say, that's a nice shirt. Little boy, you know it's true. Little boys are socialized. Little boys are socialized, and this is a broad stroke. This isn't 100%, but this is a broad stroke. Little boys are socialized the complete opposite, to say what they mean, to mean what they say, to be pinpoint accurate and very, very direct. In fact, little boys are teased when they talk too much. When a little boy talks too much, or what we think is talking too much, we'll say, son, say what you mean what you say, keep your conversation short, son. Son, you're talking like a sissy, a girl. Yes. You know this is true. This is true, right? So we go up into men, and so we say exactly what we mean. A man will be looking at a woman, and he'll be thinking to himself, great balls of fire, she's got a nice chest. I wonder what she looks like with her shirt off. But he'll say, great balls of fire, girl, you got a nice chest. Come on. You know, it's true. Now, it's not because we're stupid necessarily. I can't tell how many times I've heard something that ridiculous. And I've said, hey man, so just tell me something. What would make you think that's okay to say in the workplace? Well, I meant it as a compliment. No, I didn't ask you how you meant it. Why did you think that was okay? The other thing, guys, is sometimes we behave like we speak a language that they don't speak. We behave like they don't understand our codes. So I'm doing a class in Benicia, California. All week long I'm doing this class. And by Friday afternoon, there were about 12 guys. It was a jet fuel plant. 12 guys who hadn't finished the class, just men, right? And so it's really up close and personal, and we're really having a good conversation. And so one of the guys says, hey, Dennis, so can we compliment people at work? I said, hey, man, if you find that you're fortunate, lucky, and blessed enough to work with people that you think are good looking, why can't you just think it? Why do you have to say it? But I didn't ask you that. I just want to know, can I compliment someone? I said, but why? He says, yes or no. He says, if a woman has on a nice blouse and I think it looks nice, can I say that's a nice blouse? Or is that harassment? I said, it's not harassment. That's Friday afternoon. We get done with the class. I fly back home. Because I'm in Northern California, I fly back to San Diego. And Monday morning I get to my office, and there's a voicemail from the EVP of HR from this company. Now, I've done work with this company for 17 years. I'm on a first name basis with this guy, but the email goes like this: Dr. Davis, would you call? I know it's bad. So I call him. He says, Dr. Davis, I want to turn your attention to Friday afternoon's class at 2 p.m. Yeah, I remember. Did you tell the men in that class that it was okay to tell women they had on nice blouses? I said, well, that's out of context. He said, did you tell the men it was okay to say that they had on nice blouses? I said, well, yes, why? He goes, well, between Friday afternoon at 2 and Monday morning at 8, nice blouse had become a euphemism for nice chest. Guys, I kid you not, guys are walking all over the campus. Girl, you got a nice blouse on you. Woo, that's a nice blouse. Good God Almighty, that's a nice blouse. And so what I'm going to tell you is better to just keep it to yourself. We together so far? We together so far?
Amen.
All right, then. And by the way, you know how sometimes you'll say something and maybe your eyebrow will raise or you will have an intonation and you come off like a sexual predator, but you didn't mean it? No. Come on. You know, Marcellus knows you know what I'm talking about. As soon as I said it, you went, yeah, you got me on that one. Like, it's Friday, and we have Comfort Day Friday at work, maybe, right? And so some woman's got on jeans. I'm like, girl, you wearing them jeans. I didn't mean to sound like a sexual predator, but that's how it came off, right? Just keep it to yourself. We together? Yeah. All right. And how about this one? Harassment is specifically and exclusively man-to-woman behavior. True or false? False. And some of you all are looking at me like, come on, Dennis, don't talk down to us. We are sophisticated, but we know that this is false. Yeah, I know intellectually you know this is false, but gentlemen, many of us behave as though we believe this is true. I would dare to say there are probably some people in here. Afternoon. Good afternoon. I would dare to say that there are some people in here who behave as though this is true. Ladies, let me talk to the men for a second. So fellas, here's what happens. Last weekend you got together at one of the guys' house. You guys are having some beers, maybe somebody put some steaks on the grill, you're watching the game, and at halftime talking trash, telling lies, you know how we do. And one of the guys started telling jokes, right? He's a very funny man. And he tells this one joke, it's hysterically funny, it's also filthy, but it's really funny. It's one of those jokes that when you're driving in your car by yourself, you think about the joke, you start laughing. Right? And you get to work on Monday and you want to tell the guys who were not at the gathering over the weekend. I just want to hear from the men, ladies. So you get all the guys assembled. You're just about to tell that really funny but filthy joke. What's the first thing you do before you tell that joke, fellas?
You look around and make sure nobody else.
What's the first thing you do before you tell that joke, fellas? Make sure nobody.
Make sure there's no women.
You look around, make sure there's no women around. Say it like this. Hey, hey, fellas. That behavior tells me that this man believes that harassment, subconsciously maybe, that harassment is all about what we men do to them women. If none of them are around, I don't have to watch my mouth. And I need you to remind yourselves, because I know intellectually you know this, but I need you to remind yourselves that that's false. See, this man might be a deacon in his church. He don't want to hear that garbage coming out of my mouth. I picked the wrong one, I can tell. Everybody raised an eyebrow. This man has a 12-year-old baby girl at home. He don't want to hear that garbage coming out of my mouth. This man is old-fashioned, and public discussions of sexuality embarrass him. I have just contributed to a hostile work environment for all three of these men, and I didn't think it was possible because there were no women around. And by the way, this extends beyond sex. You're going to tell that black, white, Latino, Asian, gay, straight, Jew, Christian, Muslim, Sikh joke. And before you make that really inappropriate statement, you look around to make sure that there's no representative member of that group present. When we do give the definition of harassment, we're going to see that that is a mistake. In fact, let's do it now. The full definition of harassment is this. Harassment is the existence of an environment that is threatening, intimidating, hostile, and offensive based upon a person's membership in a protected class. While we're focusing on sex and gender, sexual orientation, gender identity this afternoon, the fact of the matter is it includes race, religion, color, creed, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, disability, a whole list of what are known as protected classes, right? And we'll go over those momentarily. And so what I need you to remind yourselves is that even if there isn't a representative member present, once I introduce certain things into the environment, I've gone a step toward creating or contributing to a hostile work environment. We together so far?
Yeah, but let me ask you a question. So basically,
I'm almost scared to come to you, but go ahead.
So what I'm getting to, when we're at the workplace, basically we're there to work, whether it's lunchtime, leaving, this and that. Don't bring up any jokes that could be offensive to anybody, no subject matter. Basically, you're there to work because you don't know that I could say something and I could say something that could offend him and I wouldn't want to offend him. So we just have to clear our minds and just think work is work. To have those thoughts in your mind or fantasize or tell yourself these jokes when you go home, but you don't know who's listening or hearing.
I
mean, that's what I'm getting the sense. You just really have to.
I don't disagree with that. I don't disagree with that, Donna, although I suspect I'm a little less rigid, and here's why. Listen, we're not robots. The idea that I'm going to come to work and work for 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day and never talk about anything but work is unrealistic. But you're right in terms of subject matter. I do want to be mindful of this is a professional environment, no question about that. Okay? How about this one? Unlawful behavior is required before an employer can take action against an accused. True or false? False. That is false. Let me tell you why this is in our true false today. There's been a lot of talk recently about due process. You hear people complaining, that man got fired and he wasn't even afforded due process. You want to stop it. One of the things, so over the last 13 months or so, lots of men have come up to me going, hey Dennis, got to ask you something. What? What's the statute of limitations on bad behavior? I'm like, why? There's something you want to tell me about, right? Well, why do you ask? Well, Dennis, it seems to me that part of the Me Too movement is that people are coming forward, they're talking about things that happened last year, 2 years ago, 5 years ago, 20 years ago, and I don't think that's right. Why should people come forward and complain about things? I go, well, I can't tell you about people coming forward. Let me tell you why your employer wants me to come forward and to tell them about inappropriate behavior. See, Claire has treated me inappropriately based upon my race or religion, my color, my creed, my nationality, my gender, my sexual orientation, whatever the protected class is, right? But it happened a year ago. It hasn't happened since. My employer might still want to hear about that because what we know about people is that we tend to be the way we are in the world, wherever we are in the world. And so she did it to Dennis. Maybe she's doing it to Tom, Dick, and Harry as well. And they want to be able to nip the behavior in the bud, or at least have the opportunity to make sure that the behavior is not ongoing. That's what I've been telling people. About being disciplined, even though my behavior might not have risen to unlawful behavior, I'm finding more and more this last year and a half, more examples of people who haven't read their employment contracts. Who don't understand that in most of our employment contracts, there are policies and procedures that we're required to follow, and our employer can discipline us when we breach one of those policies and procedures, whether we have broken the law or not. And that's what so many people have forgotten about most recently. Harassment is always based on sex, true or false? False. Of course that's false. It can be based on any of the protected classes. Even though we're focusing on sex today, it can be based on any of the protected classes. This is my favorite one to do. It goes like this. You can ask someone out on a date as often as you like, as long as you ask politely. True or false? False. You said that emphatically. False. Your name, ma'am? I'm sorry?
Zenobia.
So, Zenobia, how many times can you ask a person out before it becomes harassment? Well, let me back up. Can you ask a colleague, and by the way, we're talking about colleagues, peers, equals. We're not talking about where a power differential exists. We'll talk about that later. So can you ask a colleague out on a date without it being harassment?
Yes.
All right. Can that ever become harassment?
Yes.
All right. When does it become harassment?
When they feel uncomfortable.
Zenobia says when they feel uncomfortable. But here's the problem with that. Once I recognize that I've made you feel uncomfortable, it's already what? It's already too late. So it's got to be a way for me to monitor my own behavior and to know where the line is before I cross the line. But before we go on, I got to share the story with you. So I'm in Texas. I hope there's no one in Texas on the line. And I'm doing this class, summer class, and the room is set in little pods. I walk around the room, so I ask those same 3 questions that I just asked Zenobia. I said, hey, can you ask a colleague out on a date while I'm being harassment? And they all went, yes. I said, okay, can it ever become harassment? They all went, yes. I said, how many times do you have to ask somebody out before it becomes harassment? I got every number under the sun. The baseball fans were like, 3 strikes and you're out. Somebody said 5, 6 times. Behind me, I heard some guy go 8, 9 times. Now, it was funny and I wanted to laugh, but if you have kids, you'll appreciate this. You know how your kid will say something stupid and you want to laugh because it's funny. But before you laugh, you got to make sure they were kidding. See, if they were kidding and you laugh, well, you all have just shared a moment. But if they are serious and you laugh, you've condoned an inappropriate behavior. So I backed up, I said, come on, man. You wouldn't ask somebody out 8 times, have them tell you no, and then you go back and ask them out a 9th time, would you? He said, Doc, I would, and I have. I said, please tell me, why would you ask somebody out a 9th time after they told you no 8 times? He said, I kid you not. He said, Dennis, she kept telling me she had to clean up the house or do her hair. I said, Bubba. I didn't call him Bubba, but I was thinking Bubba. I mean, I'm a professional too, you know, but in my head, I was like, Bubba. But I was like, come on, man. If some woman tells you to come Saturday night, rather than go to dinner with you, she'd rather stay home and clean up the house. She don't want you, man. And he argued with me. He started talking to me about how sometimes women have to play coy. And sometimes women don't want to be easy. I said, man, 9 no's ain't coy. 9 no's is get out of my face, you freak, I ain't ever going out with you. He wouldn't hear it, right? I let it go, I had to move on, but I was certain that I would hear about him again. And I'm certain that I will. So, there is a number. What's the number?
3.
2. Who said 2? So, I can ask you out 2 times, but the 3rd time is out of bounds, or the 2nd time's out of bounds. Which one's out of bounds? Which one's harassment? The 2nd time's harassment. So Zenobia says, if I ask her out once, no harm, no foul. But if after she says no, if I come back and ask her out again, that's harassment. She right or wrong?
Right. I agree.
I hear crickets in here.
Well, she
What's your
said
name,
no.
ma'am? What's your name? Right there. What's your name? Yes.
Mallory.
Mallory. She right or wrong?
Right?
Mallory's like, I got a 50-50 shot. Okay, why is she right then?
Because after the 2nd time, if they still don't want to go out with you, and then you ask the 3rd time, it seems like you just...
Well, hold on, Mel. You give me a different answer. Claire said, I can ask her out once, but the 2nd time's harassment. It sounds like you're saying, I can ask out twice, but the third time's harassment. Which one are you saying?
Oh, okay. I think I'm a little more forgiving than Claire then.
Okay.
Okay, so the first time.
So what Mallory is telling me is I'm probably better off asking her out. I'm sorry, go ahead.
Okay, so the first time there might be a fluke answer, right?
Yeah.
The second time it's like, okay, that answer is probably a clear indication of what the person actually wants.
All right.
Third time's probably not gonna happen.
Okay. Talk, guy. Oh, you already know the answer. You can't answer. Anybody else? Anybody else? So who's right, Mallory or Claire? Claire's right.
I'd say it's subjective.
What's your name, man?
Chris.
Chris, go ahead.
It's subjective and it depends on the person. I don't necessarily know if there is an objective answer.
Well, see, Chris, I told you 10 minutes ago there is an answer.
Oh,
Get out of my class, man. No, because think about this. I'm being serious here. If it varied from person to person, then I would never know what the rules are, and the workplace would be a minefield. No, there is an answer.
As soon as she says no, that's it.
So the very first time she says no, if I ask her out again, that's harassment. So you agree with Clay?
Well, if there's a number, if you want an answer, what is it? You can't just pull something out of the air.
Well, you can't ask me. I'm asking you.
Well, I'm asking you.
Okay, well, Chris, you go with him. Get out. Anybody else want to weigh in on this? What I will tell you is that we heard the answer, and what I'll tell you is, in all seriousness, this is the one that trips up people the most. And I will tell you that one of the things that happens is we hear the answer, but it doesn't resonate with us. Claire gave us the right answer. See, in this area, what we're trying to do is to address competing interests. See, on the one hand, the law says, you know what, Dennis, people spend 8, 10, 12, 14 hours a day at work. And when you spend that amount of time at work, sometimes some friendships are going to grow. Sometimes some romance is going to evolve. We're never going to make that strictly illegal. On the other hand, Dennis, that woman doesn't come here so you can chase her all over the premises. So we have to put something in place that meets everybody's needs. Here's what they came up with. Repeated requests for romance and or sex is sexual harassment. How many times is repeated, Claire? More than once. So there's some colleagues, some equals, some peer. We're not talking about this. We're talking about this. That you think you might like to get to know, go ahead, that's your business. But you got one shot. Make it a good one. Hey, Lucy, I was thinking maybe this weekend we can get together, go see that new movie that came out. What you think? She says, thanks, Dennis, but I don't think so. That's it, I'm done. The very next time I ask out that individual, it's called repeated request for romance and or sex. We together so far? Yeah. And by the way, I know many of us are probably fed up to hear with all the information out there in the public domain about sexual harassment, allegations, and people losing their careers, but I would ask you to steep yourself in it one more time, sometime this weekend. There are going to be some patterns that you're going to notice. The people coming forward and complaining about harassment, they're going to say, you know what, he wouldn't take no for an answer. At first I was polite, and then I was like really forceful, but he just wouldn't take no for an answer. It's the repeated nature of the behavior that very often gets us in trouble. We together?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Your name is?
Sarah.
Sarah, go ahead.
So basically, if, let's say there's a guy asks a girl out, she says no, and then, a little bit of time passes by, and then he doesn't ask her out, he's just like, oh, I happen to have these Drake tickets, I'm wondering who I'm going to take with me. Now she can jump out and say she wants to go, right? And everything's cool, right?
Well, hold on now, Sarah. In every class, there's always somebody looking for the loophole. And I'm pretty good at pegging who it is. I have not pegged you, Sarah.
I'm just trying to,
But let me see if I can plug up these loopholes.
I'm trying to keep the romance alive in this place that's inside.
I
don't want to completely shut down.
That's a bad idea.
Romance.
Some of y'all looking for romance in all the wrong places. So let's see if we can close up some of the loopholes. How about this, Dennis? I asked somebody out at work, and by the way, in most of my examples, I show where the man's behaving inappropriately toward the woman. I'm not stupid. I know that sometimes the woman is inappropriate. Most of my examples are heterocentric. I get that. I'm doing that intentionally. Why? Because somewhere between 90 and 95% of all allegations of harassment are where the man has behaved inappropriate toward a woman. But please don't feel like you're exempted no matter what your gender is or what your interests in romance and sex are. Back to the question at hand, though. So Dennis, I asked this person out at work, and they said no. But they said no because they're in a relationship. About 6 months later, I heard that they broke up. So Dennis, what's the statute of limitations on this thing? There is no statute of limitations on this. I asked you out, you said no, I gotta move on. Now, if your situation changes, you can circle back around and ask me out. That's loophole number one. Loophole number two, hey Dennis, I asked somebody out at work, and they gave me some mamby-pamby. Oh no, maybe some other time. It was not a yes or a no, it was a maybe. So Dennis, if you ask somebody out and you get a maybe, it's like a mulligan. It's a do-over, right? Right?
No.
No. Talk to me, Dennis.
Well, it's just not. I mean, it's either yes or it's no. And
Well, if they don't say yes or no, how do I know if I got a yes or a no?
Other than yes is no.
Anything other than yes is a no. That's the best way to look at it. How about this one, Dennis? I asked somebody out and they said no, but I asked them out at work and they said no. But I know where she and her girlfriends hang out on the weekends. So I'm making my business to be there, and I'm moseying up next to her. How about that, Dennis? Well, that's twice and that's stalking. Let me be serious. I like to have a good time, and you know what? Your laughter does my soul good. I'm being very serious here. Sometimes people get bogged down with this stuff, and I like to hear you laughing, but I want to be serious for a second. Hey, parents, you got a 15-year-old baby girl. Now, up until this point, you've allowed her to date or to go out in group settings, right? But today's her 16th birthday, and in your household, you've decided that 16 people can date one-on-one. All right. So there is this kid at school who likes your baby girl. He has asked your baby girl out. She has said, in as polite a manner as you have taught her to be, thank you, but no thanks. What do you want that kid to do with your baby girl?
Leave her alone.
Leave her alone before I got to come up there to that school, right? Well, think about it, folks. If that applies to kids, why would that not apply to us grown folk? I've asked, you said no, I gotta move on. We're together.
Yeah.
All right then. How about this one? Romance and or sex, where there's a power differential, is especially potentially dangerous. True or false?
True.
True. Absolutely true. Why?
Control.
What's that?
Control of the other person. You could lose your job if you don't say yes.
And if I put you in a situation, Donna, where I say you can lose your job if you don't say yes, what's that called? I hear somebody whispering. What's that called?
Quid pro quo.
Quid pro quo. Absolutely right. That's a very specific form of sexual harassment. Quid pro quo is Latin, and the literal exchange means this in exchange for that. It's a very specific form of sexual harassment that requires two primary ingredients. Ingredient number one is we have a power differential. I'm here and you're here. Ingredient number two is I offer you an exchange. You know, in exchange for a little bit of this, I'll give you a little bit of that. Now that I'm looking to give to you is what?
Promotion.
A raise, a promotion, a specialized assignment, some type of career enhancement. And what's the this I want back from you? Sex. And some of y'all looked at me like this. You know. Come on, grown folk. What does I want back from you?
Sex.
Sex. If you see with me or go out with me, I'll take care of your career. Folks, that is expressly forbidden. It is illegal. It is seen as the ugliest and the nastiest form of sexual harassment because it's an abuse of power. By the way, as an aside, if you take me up on that challenge for your homework assignment, when you immerse yourself for maybe 10 minutes this weekend in all the information out there about harassment these days, you're going to find that overwhelmingly there's a person in a position of power, influence, and or authority, and a person not. But then some of you are looking at me like, come on, Dennis, you're talking down to us. Nobody is so stupid as to say to somebody else, you know, if you see with me, I'll take care of you. Yes, they do. That's why I'm gainfully employed. But there's more. I don't have to say it. The law recognizes the implied quid pro quo. What is that? Well, I'm here and Lucy's here. And in as gentlemanly a manner as I can muster up, I ask her out. Hey, Lucy, I was thinking maybe this weekend we could get together, have a couple glasses of wine, maybe get to know each other a little bit. What do you think? Lucy's thinking to herself, can't stand that, man. If he was the last man on the planet, I wouldn't go out with him. But I can't say that. It'll come back and bite me. Oh, well, I guess I'll go ahead and go. Sure, Dennis, let's go. Now, in my mind, I think it's consensual. Is it consensual? Is it consensual?
No.
But she said yes.
She didn't mean it. She's only protecting her job.
So now I got to read her mind, too?
That's right, because you know things you shouldn't do after listening to you.
I thought I kicked you out already, Donna. That is the answer. That's called quid pro quo. That's called implied quid pro quo. We together so far?
Yeah.
All right. Let's do two more. We're going to move on and finish up. How about this one? Sexual harassment always involves putting my hands on another person. True or false, Donna?
No.
That's right. Thank you. Getting to my material way before I was ready to get to it. There are two major forms of sexual harassment. One's called quid pro quo, which we just talked about, and one's called a hostile work environment. What's a hostile work environment? Well, the law says we all have a right to come to work and to work in an environment free from sex and sexuality and sexual innuendo. Of all the things that belong here, would never belong here, is sex, sexuality, and sexual innuendo. Anybody who introduces things of a sexual nature to the workplace, excepting if it's part of our work product, that person can be said to have created or contributed to a hostile work environment. Now, there are three ways you can create a hostile work environment: physically, visually, and verbally. Let's start with physically. How do you create a sexually hostile work environment physically? Putting my hands on you in an overly familiar manner against your will. I'm giving you an unsolicited back rub or massage. I'm pinching you in the rear end. You can't be doing that. Now, most of us have enough sense that we don't go to work and pinch people on the butt. But there are two types of touching that are very prevalent in the American workforce that are causing problems: hugs and horseplay. Let's start with hugs. Are all hugs sexual harassment? No. What type of hugs are sexual harassment? Anybody but Donna. What type of hugs are sexual harassment? Unwanted hugs. See, I was worried she was going to say gross, right? Unwanted hugs. Listen, I have no doubt that some of you probably have hugging relationships. Go on with your bad self. You've known each other for a long time. You went to school together. You worship together. You work out together. Your kids are friends. Your significant others are friends. Who am I to tell you you can't love each other? That's none of my business. What I will tell you, though, is this. If you decide to drape your arms all over some man or some woman, you better know that they feel the same way about that hug as you do. Because if they don't, that's called sexual harassment. We together?
Yes.
We together?
Yes.
All right, then. The second way we physically introduce sex in the environment is mostly a man-on-man thing. Anybody know what I'm talking about, fellas?
Oh, no.
Anybody know what I'm talking about? Horseplay. I pop some guy in the butt with a shop towel. I give him a dollar boy or a good game. Wow, right? I pull his chest here or give him a nipple treat. Right? I saw one 2 years ago. It was this time of year 2 years ago. I'm watching the NBA Finals, and I watched J.R. Smith come off the off the court, and he had a really good 2-minute run. And one of his buddies on the sideline went to give him a high five, but J.R. Smith did not return the high five. Anybody know what he did?
Oh, he grabbed him.
What'd you say he did? No, I've seen that before. Anybody know what he did? He hit him in the testicles. I lost my mind. No. Come on now. Some of the men here know exactly what I'm talking about. I lost my mind. So I'm yelling at the TV, son. I'm watching with my then 20-year-old son. I was like, son, you missed it. He's not reacting. I thought he didn't see it. You missed it. He hit him in the testicles. He said, I saw it. I said, no, you couldn't have seen it, because if you saw it, you'd be reacting like I'm reacting. He hit him, and you could tell it hurt because he had taken a knee, right? He hit him in the testicles. My son said, Dad, it wasn't that big of a deal. What do you mean it's not that big of a deal? He said, Dad, we do it all the time. What do you mean you do it all the time? He said, Dad, that's called a ball tap. I said, it has a name. He said, yeah, sometimes it's called a cross cup. I said, what? He said, yeah, sometimes it's called a cup check. I said, what? He gave me 4 other things. They were filthy. I can't tell you, all right? They were filthy. I'm looking at my son like he's from a different planet. I can't believe this. And then he all of a sudden becomes ESPN analyst. He said, by the way, Dad, that was a perfectly executed ball tap. I said, you scored them? He said, Dad, the intent of a ball tap is for you, the perpetrator, to solicit a response from the recipient while you yourself do not respond. He said, if you look at the sideline, because it was the 22nd timeout, they didn't break to a commercial, and they still had the camera on the sidelines. The guy, I think it was Anderson Bergeau, that J.R. Smith hit in the crotch, he went down on one knee. You could tell he was hurting, and J.R. Smith was standing like this. What's wrong with that fool? My son says, Dad, I got to get that a 10. So I started talking about this. And as I would go around talking about this, I found lots of men who knew exactly what I'm talking about. But there's more. In October of 2017, I was doing a class in Toronto, Ohio, where a woman raised her hand. And she said to me, Dennis, girls do it too. I said, what? She said, girls do it too. I said, do what, ma'am? She goes, hit each other in the junk. I said, girls don't have junk. What are you talking about? She said, I have 2 teenage girls, and they punch each other in the junk all the time. A lot of the other mothers in the room went, yeah, I've seen it too. So I went home, I asked my son. He said, oh yeah, Dad, there's websites, prank websites. I don't suggest you go to these while you're at work. There are prank websites where both men and women, boys and girls, young people, are punching each other in the crotch, girls and boys. Listen to me carefully, young people. If you and your friends punch each other in the crotch on your own time, That's your business. But you can't do that here at work. We're together so far? Woo. All right. And the last one on this, and then we're going to wrap things up. Leaders, supervisors, managers, people in positions of leadership and authority, they have a duty to immediately investigate all allegations of harassment as soon as they hear about them. True or false?
Yes.
This is false.
Oh, really?
Why is this false?
What?
Why is this false?
Well, it should be true. It should be true.
Oh, it is false. Why is it false? Say that louder, Claire.
So the HR department.
Yeah, listen to me, folks.
That's
The brain trust in our country for investigating allegations of harassment is said to lie in HR. And here's why. With respect to the EEOC, consistency matters. Let's say that all of us 5 here, we're all supervisors, and we all get different complaints from our employees of harassment. And I do an investigation, she does an investigation, she does one, he does one. We all have different levels where we look into things, and we come to different kinds of conclusions, and we mete out different levels of discipline, if any at all. That makes us look really, really bad, and that's bad for us when we're that inconsistent. So all of our allegations of harassment and inappropriate behavior ought to be funneled, inappropriate behavior in the areas we're talking about here today ought to be funneled to HR. We together so far? Yes. All right then, let's really briefly kind of show you some definitions that we talked about, but I know that lots of people take these things in visually more, so really briefly. Discrimination is simply the differential treatment of an individual based upon their membership in a protected class. It's when I make a decision about your career based upon who or what you are. Harassment is the existence of an environment that's threatening, intimidating, hostile, and offensive based upon your membership in a protected class. Briefly, let me just talk to you about protected classes. There's a lot of misinformation out there in the public domain these days. Say, well, Dennis, what makes you think that we should listen to you? Well, you should listen to me only because every word I'm saying to you has been listened to and heard and signed off on at the highest level of your organization. Nothing I'm saying here today is impromptu or based upon my opinion. There are people out there who will tell you that protected classes are women and minorities. That is false. A protected class is simply a characteristic, a quality, a trait, and we all have them, based upon which it is unlawful for me to make a decision about your career. If I do, that's called discrimination. And based upon which it's unlawful for me to tease you and taunt you or make you the butt end of the joke at work. If I do, it's called harassment. Let me briefly, before I get to your final questions, show you all the protected classes. We talked about most of them today so far, but we focused on sex. And I want to make sure we're all clear that's not just about sex. Age is a protected class. You can't make a decision about my career based upon the fact that I'm over 40 according to federal law. Here in California, you can't tease me or taunt me about my age at work. What are you talking about, Dennis? You know how one guy at work, y'all call him old dude? You better learn that man's name. That one woman at work, y'all call her granny? You better learn that woman's name. And by the way, sometimes I will laugh when you say or do these things to me because I'm uncomfortable, because I don't know what else to do. It isn't necessarily a sign that I'm okay with what you're doing. By the way, and I might be okay with it today and might not be okay with it tomorrow. Disabilities are a protected class. The Americans with Disabilities Act, and the Americans with Disabilities Act amended says, you can't make me the butt end of your joke because of my mental or physical challenge. And you can't make a decision about my career based upon my mental or physical challenge. National origin. This is one of my favorite ones. People forget about this one. Some people misinterpret what it means. Again, I know that you are sophisticated. But my job is my job, so I'm still going to go over it. People think that this means foreigners versus Americans. It does not. It does not. It does not only mean that. What's protected is my nationality. What's protected is my nation of birth. What's protected is my citizenship, my accent, but also my familial extraction. One of the things we take for granted in this country is that as countries go, we are a very young country. We're only 300 to 400 years old. If you go back 10, 15, 20 generations, everybody in this room, their people are from someplace other than California, other than the U.S. Whatever that is for you is protected. Your people come from Mexico, protected. Japan, protected. Ireland, protected. Kenya, protected. I can't come to work and tease you. You say, well, Dennis, who does that? We do this so commonly, we don't even recognize it. There are 3 days a year when we see spikes in complaints of this sort. Anybody want to give me what they think the #1 day of the year is that people complain about this? St. Patrick's Day, March 17th is the #1 day of the year because everybody's got something funny to say about their Irish colleague. How about #2?
Cinco de Mayo.
Cinco de Mayo is number 3, but that's a very good guess, Sarah. That's number 3, but there's another one in there. What's number 2?
Rosh Hashanah.
Who said Rosh Hashanah? Get out of my class, man. We'll get you there. We'll get you there. No. That has more to do with what? Race. Columbus Day. Columbus Day celebrates the heritage of Italian Americans. And everybody has something funny to say about their Italian colleagues on Columbus Day. You can't tease me about my heritage. I look around the room and I see most of you in here are much younger than I am. I will tell you that when I was growing up, the #1 most common ethnic joke was, you might know, 50s and 60s, Polish jokes. Yeah, you can't tell those at work. Can't do it. How about this? The 2 of us are Polish. Well then, certainly I can tease her and she can tease me, right? No, because remember, harassment is not, Dennis, you get them all wrong, man. No, and here's why. Because harassment, remember, the definition isn't necessarily something that one person does to another that they take exception to. It is something that is introduced into the environment. So my Irish friend here, and I'm Irish too, she's okay with the jokes, right? But this person, they're not okay with it. You can't introduce that into the environment. My race. Can we talk about race at work? Well, of course we can. You ever notice that when people in the workplace attempt to talk about race, they tend to lower their voices? We've done a lot of research. We understand why that happens now. We used to think it happens because they're saying mean, nasty, and dastardly things. We've come to find out that that's not really what's going on most of the time. Most of the time what's going on is I lower my voice when I talk about race because I don't want to step on any toes, and I don't know what constitutes stepping on toes these days. So I'll be like this, yeah, so this weekend my wife and I went out to the mall. Man, she ran me into the ground. After a while I said, sweetheart, I can't keep up with it. I'm going to sit right here on the bench and watch the back. You go do your thing. And just then this, like I came up and asked her, what time is it? Come on, you know you do that. And by the way, black folks, we do it too. We do it too. We do that because we don't want to step on toes, right? But we can talk about race at work. What we can't do is tease and taunt. I will tell you that there are times when I talk about race. Y'all remember Charlottesville? The rally turned into a riot. That happened on a Saturday. I was watching the coverage all weekend, and you know, I do what I do for a living, and sometimes I get discouraged. I think to myself, wow, are we making any progress? So I got into the office that Monday. I was all round-shouldered. I was all down. For the next hour and a half, me and a colleague, he happens to be white, we talked about race. Nobody got harassed. There were no slurs used, no jokes told. Then there's color, which is a subset, similar but not the same as race. Veteran status is a protected class. Religion is a protected class. Sex, and it includes sexual orientation, gender identity, and gender expression. I'm going to give you 30 seconds more. I'll take your phone questions. I'll get you out of here. Let me talk about these last 3. I was in Montgomery, Alabama, and a guy comes up to me after class. He said, Dennis, I got to tell you, man, I feel like I can't keep up. I said, sure you can. He said, I got to tell you, you know, I feel like the whole world is left me behind. I said, I get it. He says, it feels like things are moving really fast. I said, well, there are people who think that they haven't moved fast enough. He said, Dennis, I just don't understand. I said, you don't have to. He went all Scooby-Doo on me. Huh? I said, there's no law that says you have to understand me at work. Your company policy says nothing about you understanding me at work. Your company, your employer has set a bar for respect and dignity. Everybody that crosses that threshold and comes into the workplace is entitled to this level of respect and dignity. I said, I work with tons of people I don't understand. I have an Irish colleague, and when he gets together with his buddies on St. Patrick's Day, sometimes I go just for the beer drinking effect, right? But I don't know anything about the holiday. I don't really understand the background of where the holiday comes from. I go, you don't have to understand people. Your company says you have to treat them with respect and dignity, and that's a big one. These days, I see more and more people deciding, you know what, I don't understand how you live your life, and therefore it's not okay with me. It doesn't have to be okay with you, and I don't have to understand. It's about respect and dignity. We together? Yeah. I got time for one question, comment, or challenge from anybody but Donna. Anybody at all? Yes, ma'am. Your name, ma'am?
Rachel.
Rachel.
So, what about a situation where, you know, we have gallows humor?
Yes.
We talk about things in the office that can be offensive.
Give me something.
You know, we might be laughing about a guy having sex with a baby.
Well, I'm going to pass out some cards for what. Now, Rachel, I want you to call me. Well, okay. let me talk about gallows humor. I get it. I'm messing with it. I get it. Remember, I told you I started my career as a police psychologist. And I understand gallows humor exists because sometimes in order for us to be professionals, we have to distance ourselves from the things that are going on. And one of the ways, not the only way, but one of the ways we distance ourselves from things going on is we make light of it. I get it. And I'm not going to tell you you're bad or wrong for doing it. I will tell you, if it has to do with any of these protected classes, you are shrouding a line you don't want to straddle. I engage in gallows humor in my office, but not based upon race, religion, color, creed, nationality, gender, sexual orientation, gender identity, age, those things, because excuse me, you'll never know when somebody in that room might feel like they're being made the butt end of the joke. And I will tell you, it ain't gonna hold up in court. We're using gallows humor, you know. Every organization we've ever worked with believes that they have an exemption. Construction workers believe that they have an exemption. Emergency room physicians believe that they have an exemption. Nurses believe, firefighters believe, cops believe. They all believe they have an exemption because of gallows humor. And I will tell you, I've never seen it hold up in court. That's the best advice I can give you. Folks, out of respect to your time, I'm going to stop. But for those of you, I see some other hands. For those of you that don't have to raise out, if you got additional questions, I'll be around. Thank you for your participation. Good luck to you.